I am only good because I'm on steroids. Keep thinking it, and then go out and do it for yourself and realize how much you suck. And so I'm the fastest black belt in history with no prior combat sports experience.
Josh Saunders is one of the world's top practitioners in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and a respected coach. He transitioned from competitive rugby and earned his black belt in Jiu Jitsu in a record time of just 3 years and 11 months.
When I first went to my first class, it was also the date that I got my license back after 52 months of being suspended on the road. Suspended driving was my middle name. I can drive a car. If I'm physically able to, I should be able to. I was mid-range, 30 kilometers over, and suspended. Got arrested, taken in the paddy wagon, and then inevitably ended up learning my lesson.
How did you develop your system of thinking through jiu-jitsu and the ground game?
If I want to go into the gym and get good, me going there every day and using the attributes that I have and smashing people is only going to get me so far. And I was like, there has to be a differentiating thing here.
His HPU coaching programs have built one of the fastest growing global communities of grapplers and jiu-jitsu students.
You competed only recently with Gordon Ryan, the Mike Tyson of grappling and jiu-jitsu, and so you get 11 days notice. What's that process like?
If you're thinking about, I forgot my lucky jockstrap or whatever the fuck, like you've already lost. Because you need things to be perfect for you to perform, and nothing is ever perfect.
The person that's sitting here, they've got a ton of excuses, they're bitching out all the time. What's your advice for them?
Look at the people with the same attitude that you have, that are likely 5 or 10 years your senior, and ask yourself,
not all Australians are pieces of shit or ungrateful pieces
pieces of shit.
Yeah. What did you mean by that, and how did that come up?
That's a fucking great first question. Really, look, to be honest, it was just a bit of tongue-in-cheek between two guys. It was not meant to be recorded and then put on the internet. My coach that filmed the video has absolutely no editing skills whatsoever. And so it was obviously not excluded and ruffled some feathers and pissed some people off, rightly so. I probably would have been pissed off in that same situation if I was on the other foot. But yeah, I just think that whole situation was a little bit messy. It could have been dealt with many other different ways. Just my opinion. It doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it was the way that things were facilitated.
What was the situation?
The situation was that essentially Craig wanted to run his own event and really put one on ADCC.
So this is Craig Jones, the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy from Australia. Yep,
that's right. And he wanted to show those guys up. Essentially, a couple of things that he disagreed with was happening with the event and with the tournament, and just decided to put it on the same weekend, which caused a pretty big rift between the community of individuals that were competing originally for ADCC and the people who were moving over, and so on and so forth. And he loves drama, so it was a perfect little shitstorm. To be fair, looking back on it now, probably did a decent level at gaining more awareness and more attention for the sport, which I think rivalries aside was the original intention. Mm-hmm. And they did put on a great fucking event. I watched it later. Obviously I was competing while the event was happening, so I couldn't watch it at the same time. But they did do a great job with the event, so I'm not too mad about it.
It's really cool that you think about jiu-jitsu or grappling in a way that's good for the sport versus us versus them, especially when there's competition and things like that. How did you come about, or how did you think through that scenario and that situation? Because essentially, for those who are watching who maybe don't understand the sport well, you've got ADCC, which is like the creme de la creme of grappling or jiu-jitsu. I got to be careful these days because some people get
Some people get mad.
Yeah, when you call jiu-jitsu or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and grappling.
I don't give a fuck about that. People that are worried about that are so preoccupied by the wrong things. Just leave in comment sections. It's fucking stupid.
Very true. So you've got the creme de la creme of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, grappling, and then there's an athlete who was part of that community who decided to go out and do his own thing to sort of stick it up the community.
Pretty much.
How do you think through that, as in, like, I don't want to be part of this huge riff, like it's better for the sport?
I kind of threw myself into it by calling him an ungrateful piece of shit, didn't I? Yeah, so essentially the long and short of it was that Craig decided that athlete pay wasn't sufficient for the athletes in ADCC. And now this is something I agree with. Since the early 2000s to the 1990s, the total amount of money that you can win for a division is $10,000 US, which is not a lot when you compare the amount of work that's put in, the time, and every 2 years is when the event happens. So it's like a baby Olympics, basically. To that point as well, the Olympic athletes don't get paid diddly squat anyway. So there's a big rift within the community of like, all right, well, the athletes should be fairly compensated, but then it's also for the glory of winning those titles. And the only reason that people have names in the sport is because they've won those titles. So in fact, if they market themselves correctly, they will get benefited as a result of winning that tournament. And it's a big reason why most people in the sport have a name, because for other reasons, the IBJJF is nowhere near as popular. No one really gives a shit about it, even within the sport, let alone without the sport. There are a lot of people that can watch an ADCC tournament and there's big slams and there's throws through tables and it's like WWE type of shit. And it's very exciting to watch and it's really cool. And if even from an outside perspective, albeit not an MMA perspective where it's very clear delineation between that guy get punched in the face more than the other guy, therefore he wins. Yep. Jiu-Jitsu is much more difficult to look at from an outsider's perspective and decide who's winning. But ADCC did a great job at that by mixing all these different styles and putting on big events and then starting to go in bigger and bigger stadiums. The original idea, I think, that Craig had a big problem with was the fact that Mo had decided to spend $2 million renting out T-Mobile when they could have had the same stadium and then given that money to the athletes.
Okay.
And so that's the real, I believe, from my opinion, is the real discrepancy between their two viewpoints. And both of them have credence to the idea that one would make sense over the other, and in terms of really delivering a nicely finished product to people that are outside of the sport. I get the understanding with the attraction of T-Mobile. Yep. I do. I also find it hard to reconcile that the $2 million would have been worth it, but only in hindsight.
Yep.
So it's kind of unfair to actually say that I would have known that beforehand. I'm not an event promoter. I don't know how to promote an event. I don't know how to set up an event. I have no idea. Competing at T-Mobile was really fucking cool. Being in a gladiatorial arena, or as close as we can be. I spoke to my friend Tyson Pedro about it, and he said, man, you'll absolutely love it because people are like on top of you the entire time based on it. It's kind of like almost like a velodrome effect. It goes directly vertical rather than out horizontal. It's kind of like Suncorp.
Yep.
It's the exact same effect. And I was like, yeah, that's going to be really cool. But I think the original thing was athletes don't get paid enough. We need to pay them more. There was a couple of guys saying like, I had this job while I was winning world titles and I should have been compensated more for that. And that's something I personally don't agree with, because it's up to you, your own personal responsibility, the way that you market yourself on the internet, because social media is free. It doesn't take a lot of effort to be able to promote yourself correctly. You see notable exceptions in the UFC. You see Paddy Pimblett, Sean O'Malley, Conor McGregor is obviously the biggest one, but those guys put disproportionate effort into their profiles and into their persona outside of the sport and then performed really well. So you have to have a unique balance of both of those things, because there are guys who are in the UFC who are otherwise very successful in their fighting careers that nobody knows who they are because they didn't put the effort on the other side of things. And for some reason, some of these guys in jiu-jitsu just decided that they were entitled to more money. Not that I'm saying that they're not, but they were entitled to more money based on them just winning a tournament, which is the thing that I disagreed with. I'm not going to say don't pay me more. That's stupid. I would love to get compensated more for the work that I put in, obviously. But if it really is a big problem where you're having to decide between work and training sessions, feeding yourself and training sessions, recovery and training sessions, the onus should be on you, not anybody else. That was where I kind of distanced myself from that idea. And then also, secondly, the reason I did ADCC instead of Craig's event was because I'd already qualified through trials. I already said that I was going to do it. My word to somebody to say that I'm going to do something is more valuable than going back on that. So that was something based on like an integrity standpoint that I wasn't going to go back on.
It's interesting you say that, because obviously you've been, we've been following each other for a while on social media, and there are a lot of business owners, because we obviously work with a lot of business owners as well, that they will say things like, yeah, but I'm a better electrician than all the other electricians. And I say, yeah, but no one fucking knows it.
Yeah.
Because you're not on social media, you're not doing this stuff. And they think that like social media is always secondary to them developing this like amazing skill set. When they have it, the money should just roll in, and then they're surprised when money just doesn't come in the door because they can run a wire down a wall better than somebody else.
Yeah.
And not taking the credit away from those types of people. But I talk about this a lot in my events as well. When everyone can glue pipes together and call themselves a plumber, then how the fuck does someone else differentiate between who gets paid more and who doesn't from a customer standpoint? There's more work that goes into it, but you just don't see it if you're not exposed to it. And I think you've done a really good job with that on social media. Now, you've been really open about steroid use or PEDs and supplementation and things like that. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that there's such a issue around this idea of steroid use or PEDs, and it's like this fast track? Because I was just on Reddit, which I almost think is like where every scumbag on the planet goes to hang out and just,
You're right.
Talk shit. Like when people talk stuff, they're like, yeah, but this happened and this person said this. I'm like, did you just fucking read that on Reddit, or did you actually have a live experience with that person? Mm-hmm. But essentially every fuckwit on earth hangs out in Reddit. I'm reading these comments and stuff, and there's all this stuff that, you're just winning tournaments because you're on juice, and, you're only good because you're on juice. How do you deal with all that stuff, knowing that I know that that's bullshit. That's bullshit. How do you deal with all of that? And how do you deal with people thinking that there's some shortcut, or it's like Popeye with his spinach, he takes it and all of a sudden his muscles just pop up.
Yeah. Keep thinking that, please. I am only good because I'm on steroids. Keep thinking it, and then go out and do it for yourself and realize how much you suck. It's so simple. John Jones said this very famously in one of his interviews, and everybody said, well, you're just long arms. That's the only reason you're good, is because you have a reach advantage. He goes, keep thinking that, please. Believe that, so that you don't work hard because you are excusing yourself from training in a way that could potentially beat me because I have something that you don't, that there's nothing you can do about. Great. It's always an amoralistic conversation where they're like, oh, well, I'm too good to cheat and all that sort of stuff. As far as I'm aware, it's not illegal in the federations that I compete in. So therefore it's not cheating. So you're hiding behind this white knight virtue signaling morality that says that you're a better person than me because you don't cheat in the sport, that it's not cheating if you do what I'm doing. And so it's this weird thing that they have in their mind, that they think that if they just did it, they would be a world champion. Everybody's on it. Then why are there only a handful of world champions? If everybody's on it, it has to be something else, does it not? If business is just about how much money you can make, then who separates from who? Is it the people that just have a shit ton of startup capital? Some of the time, yeah. But most of the time, those guys straight away, because they don't understand the fundamentals. I listened to a video, this is really funny actually. A Saudi prince got $30,000 from his father, and he goes, all right, go start a business. And 2 months later, he came back. He goes, I've got no money left. He goes, this time I'll give you 300,000. 6 months later, he comes back. He's got no money left because he has no idea what the value of it is, how to multiply it, how to earn it, how to keep it. Then he gets himself to a stage. His dad's like, all right, look, I'm going to give you $30 million. You're going to build a hotel complex. You're going to do this, 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 and this. And then you're going to be fine. And then he had the audacity to say, that was where I started to get successful. I'm like, well, you didn't. You just flooded the market with a ton of money, and then your dad had to do it for you, and so on and so forth. You can't really define that as success. And it's kind of more or less on the same sidelines as what these people are assuming is achievable and attainable just by exogenous hormone usage. And you can look at anybody in a run-of-the-mill anytime fitness. You go and ask them, maybe they won't be truthful, but maybe they will. You go and ask them if you're on steroids, and 90% of those people, you'd be shocked because they look like the average Joe. And I'm not saying it does nothing. That is completely ridiculous. It's obviously a performance enhancing, but it's enhancing the thing that you are doing currently. So if your work that you're doing currently is dog shit, you'll be enhancing dog shit. It's the same thing. You can take as many nootropics in the world as you like, but if you're reading Captain Underpants novels, you're not going to get smarter. It's very simple.
I am all with that, because I think that's a common thing that comes up. Like, there's a certain US president now that I'm not sure that I can mention because of, what YouTube will leave up and take down.
It's tricky.
But, there's this certain US president that some of you are aware of. His name starts with T, but the last name anyway.
The Orange Man.
The Orange Man. But people say, well, he's lucky because his dad gave him capital to start with. Anyone who can take something and multiply it is completely different. Like, I say the same thing to just your average Joe. I say, right, so you get $1,000 paycheck a week. What do you do with it? And they go, it goes to zero. And I go, so you just add more zeros onto it. What happens? It goes to zero, right? It's habits. But they think that because there's more zeros, it automatically has an upside without a downside. Like, it just doesn't, doesn't make sense.
Not at all. There's a really good content creator. I forget what his name is. A mate of mine, he's a fitness influencer. His name's Gabriel. He's from Melbourne. And he did a collaboration video with this young kid who is, I think he's a mortgage lender by day, and then he works at a service station for extra hours during the week, and he's already got 3 houses at 23.
Yep.
Phenomenal story, because he goes and shows the process of him spreadsheeting out all of his expenses, not going to clubs, not drinking, not spending on frivolous bullshit. And he goes, you could do it, but you buy 3 vapes a week and go and buy a bottle on the weekend, and you do dumb shit during the week. You eat out 7 times a week and all these sorts of things. He goes, if you were willing to trade that to have what I have, you would have what I have. Yep. But you're not willing to trade that. You're not willing to become a different person so that you could have those things. And that is not the economy's fault. It's not money's fault. It's your fault. That's your problem. It's you.
I have it all the time. You're lucky because you have a supercar. I'm like, motherfucker, I worked like the day after Christmas Day. I spent that with family, and Jess and I were both working.
Yeah.
And then like Easter, we're working half the time. I'll start working on like a Friday or a Monday, and I go, where the fuck are all the staff? And Jess goes, it's a long weekend. And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't fucking know. I just work, right? And
I do that as well.
And I think like so many people think that there are these shortcuts or that there's this luck factor. I mean, sometimes there is, but most of the time, like, even if you did have luck, you'd still fuck it up anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you would squander the opportunity because you wouldn't take the step that is necessary. And it's that old adage of luck is where preparation meets opportunity. That's the whole idea. You're not prepared. So the opportunity will be in front of you and it'll pass you by. And then you'll call everybody else in your circle lucky. But that's your fault, not theirs. It's got nothing to do with them.
I agree. What got you into jiu-jitsu or grappling in the first place? Because you were originally a professional rugby league player. What made the transition? How did you figure that out? Like, how did you figure out that you would enjoy that sport, or was it just like an organic thing?
Yeah, it was super organic. It was partway through the first scamdemic lockdown, and I'll leave that in.
Yeah, I was going to say we can't say that. Got to cut that out for YouTube as well. That gets taken down.
You're allowed to say that. That period where they decided locking everybody in their house was a great idea. My best mate, Zach, rang me and he goes, we're going to have a garage session of this jiu-jitsu thing that I had not heard about aside from on Rogan's podcast. I had no idea what it was. And he goes, do you want to come? I was like, yeah, sure. Drove out to his house in Western Sydney and got there, and there was myself, Zach, Connor and James, and those guys had been training for anywhere between 6 and 3 months respectively. And they said, all right, what we're going to do is going to set a 5-minute timer and you're just going to do this thing. And I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. Grabbed a hold of them, put all of them inside control and squeezed the living daylights out of them for 5 minutes. And they basically said to me at the end of the session, they're like, it would be illegal if you don't do this, because we know things and we couldn't do a single thing to you. And I'm sure back then I was the biggest spastic of a white belt, because everybody is. No temperance, no control, no pacing, no weight placement, no precision. And that pretty much spurred me on to wait until the end of that period when everything opened up again. Interestingly enough, if you believe in like the sacred cosmic workings of everything, the 24th of July 2020 was when I first went to my first class. It was also the date that I got my license back after 52 months of being suspended on the road.
Why? What happened? What did you do?
Oh, God. Suspended driving was my middle name when I was 18.
Okay.
The first one, I didn't recognize, but because we'd moved houses, they sent the fine to my old residence. I hadn't updated my address. And so on Christmas Eve, of all times, I'm sick. I'm deathly sick with the flu. And I'm like, I know how to fix this. I'm going to go smash myself at the gym. 18-year-old logic. And as I was driving, I just got out of the street of my house onto the main road, and a cop car comes in behind me, highway patrol. And I'm like, I wasn't speeding, so they shouldn't pull me over. They pulled me over. They're like, are you aware that you're suspended? I'm like, I fucking am now. I had no idea. So they got me. I had to drive all the way back home, and that was my first one. I went to court, got a Section 10, got off completely because it was just negligence and whatever else on my behalf. The last couple of events after that, or the prior couple of or subsequent events after that, were definitely my fault. I knew that I was suspended. I drove anyway because I'm like, I can drive a car. You know, if I'm physically able to, I should be able to. Again, idiot, anti-authoritarianism, 18-year-old logic that I'm glad that I don't have much of anymore. Got myself in a bit of pickle, suspended for a year. Then I got a 2-year sentence that was run concurrently. So essentially it was 1 year, but 2 years at the same time. Decided that I would go and try, after a night out, 3 o'clock in the morning, absolutely shit-faced, decided that I would text girls, as you do when you're buckled at 2 o'clock in the morning. One of them said, I'm in the city. If you come get me, then we can do what you think we're going to do. And I was like, oh, well, this is fantastic. What an opportunity. And I was in Rouse Hill. And Rouse Hill from the city, from here, is about a 55-minute drive with no traffic. So it's a lengthy distance. I got out about halfway through, was doing 130 down the highway, got pulled over because I was speeding. They come over. What was I? I was mid-range, 30 kilometers over, and suspended. That's a triple threat. That's not very good. So got arrested, taken in the paddy wagon, back of the esky, got thrown in a little cubicle, little glass box for 5-6 hours, crying my eyes out. What have I done? Fucking idiot. Ended up getting disqualified as a result of that, and then drove once more disqualified. I actually had a period there where I didn't drive for like 9 months. I'd like learnt my lesson, and then went, yeah, it's been 9 months. I can probably get away with it now. First drive from the Central Coast down to Sydney to South Sydney Rabbitohs training, and I'm 5 minutes away from training. That's an hour and a half drive. I'd gone 99% of the way. I had rice and chicken in a Tupperware container that I was eating on the way to training. And I got cut off, slammed on the brakes, threw the meal down into the passenger seat in the floor bay. Went to go pick it all up, couldn't quite reach the rest of it, took my seatbelt off, cleaned up the rest of it, went to put my seatbelt back on, highway patrol on a bike, sitting right next to me, watching the whole thing. And I was like, I was just trying to put the food in. He goes, pull over. I was like, fuck, okay. Pulled over, tried to tell him that I was my brother, because my brother and I look very alike. Not anymore, because my ears are all fucked up. My head's gotten 10 times bigger. Tried to tell him I was him, and he was an old school intelligent cop. He'd been there for 20, 30 years. He'd seen it all before. He thought I was trying to pull the wool over his eyes, which I was, and it wasn't going to work. So he pulls up my court photo on his little iPad. He goes, that looks like you. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. He goes, don't lie. Like, of all things, I caught you red-handed. Don't lie. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So then I went to court after that. Ended up getting a 4-year suspension and almost went to prison because I just did not learn the lesson again and again and again and again and again. And he actually said to me, the officer, he goes, if you would have got done where you're living at the moment, up the Central Coast, you would be going straight away. There'd be no jury, there'd be no nothing, you'd be sent. There's more people in jail for road crimes than there is any other offense up there. And I was like, wow, okay, that's like course correct. And then I did the whole community service thing, and that was an absolute shit show. And then inevitably ended up learning my lesson. And then obviously luck smiled on me for actually sticking with it. They changed the legislation to say that I was meant to be suspended for 12 years. They give you 5 years extra on top of every year that you accumulate regarding the RMS. It's not actually a government thing. It's an RMS thing.
What's RMS?
RMS is the Roads Maritime Service. Okay. That in New South Wales, that's what we call it.
Yep.
It used to be called the RTA, whatever it is. I don't know what you guys call it. Some 3-letter stupid acronym.
Yeah, it depends. They probably change it every year or so just so they can waste more money on rebranding.
Yeah, exactly. And confuse everybody so they don't know where to send their money and whatever else and try and get more money. Yeah, scumbags. But yeah, so anyway, it ended up getting quashed down to about 2 and a bit years after that. So I ended up only serving about 52 months of a 12-year suspension, which would have just been so ridiculous. But yeah, that all happened. Got my license back, went to a jiu-jitsu class that afternoon. Met my first coach, Severino, Cook Islands guy, super lovely guy. Had zero idea about really developing athletes to a high level. He was just a really lovely guy, had trained the sport for 10 years and knew a little bit about a little bit, but didn't know about the next level sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I quickly realized that. And with the help of a privates coach that I was getting lessons from, Josh Alsop, he actually said to me, he goes, look, if you take it seriously, you want to go out to Penrith and go and train there, which is my current gym where I train at now. And then I've been there ever since.
What made that gym different from the previous gyms that you'd gone to? What was the difference in mentality or the difference in execution?
So wide variety of training partners, belt levels, ages, different attributes were much more prevalent at the new gym, the current gym, than they were at the prior gym, because the prior gym, it was the first franchise location in Sydney. They have a very well-established gym chain up in Brisbane, up north. There's a couple in the Gold Coast and they're all over there. And my previous coach, Severino, actually moved up back to Queensland so he could open up a gym up there. And it was just very, very amateur. There was a couple of guys in there that wanted to do it for weight loss and they wanted to do it for self-defense. Some of them, it was because they saw the UFC on TV and wanted to try something out, those sorts of things.
Yep.
And Sev, as much as he was an absolute legend, have all the time in the world for him, he was just one of those guys that kind of trained through the system, got his black belt, not like exceptional at any one skill, or not a phenomenal coach. He was a great guy, but just kind of was just there to run us through some things and show us the ropes a little bit. Whereas the differentiation between Luke is that he's like my current coach. He's like completely obsessed, wants to know all the bells and whistles. He watches all the matches, everything like that. It's basically his whole thing that he does, aside from being a dad and a business owner and everything else. Mm-hmm. Whereas Sev was like, yeah, it'd be cool to run a gym. And if you ever met him, he had absolutely that personality.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, bro, okay, we can do this. Like, lovely, lovely individual. He's a really, really, really good guy. He was great. But much less on the professional side of things of like developing athletes.
Okay. Now, you've developed a system or a way of thinking. I came across your stuff just because you're this massive jack dude with, ears that look like you've been tortured a fair bit on the mat.
Yes.
And I thought, fuck, this guy's got to be good. And then I started watching some of your videos, and you weren't just a jughead that threw people on the ground and manhandled men into boys again. You actually have a way of thinking which is very logical and systematic throughout the sport. I haven't really found that too much, apart from maybe like Danaher or there are people out there, I guess Gordon Ryan and some of those sort of people. But how did you develop your system of thinking through jiu-jitsu and the ground game? And the reason why I ask is because I find that there are a lot of people out there who can do stuff, like business owners who can do stuff, athletes who do things, but to get to that next level, you almost need to be a lot more systemized in the way that you do things and systematic in your thinking and what happens when you're in a bad place. How do you regress? What do you think through? And so I'm just really fascinated with how you came across that way of thinking instead of just going into the gym and manhandling people.
Yeah, I definitely do a lot of that.
Well, just by the way, how much do you weigh and how tall are you?
What am I now? 117 in around there and 6'4".
Yeah, so you manhandle most people pretty easily without even trying.
Yeah, pretty much. And
without jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, exactly right. And that was kind of like the eventuation of how I came up with, I didn't really come up with the idea, but it's just principled thinking in terms of, if I want to go into the gym and get good, me going there every day and using the attributes that I have and smashing people is only going to get me so far. And I think I looked ahead a little bit, even in terms of the rugby league system that I was within. The best of the best that I played with were extremely diligent within their thinking about the sport, not just the components of physicality, but also the mentality and the philosophy of how they were organizing themselves. And there were people, like we were talking about with business before, there were people who were getting exponentially better results than the others, and they were all working hard. And I was like, there has to be a differentiating thing here. And I think learning the sport of jiu-jitsu has helped me really surmise that and articulate it in a much better way. But I've always been looking for that sort of edge. Like even growing up, you see your parents work very hard, harder arguably than some CEOs or even some business owners that don't really do a lot all day because they built everything 10 years in advance. You kind of see that asymmetry, but then you see the results asymmetry as well. You're like, hang on, these guys are working way less hard, but getting exponentially better results. There's got to be an efficiency dynamic here. There has to be something that the way that they see, the way that they operate, the way that they have a 30,000 foot view. I'm like, okay. And then through my years of training, I've been able to sort of think about, okay, well, if I put too much strength into this, I'm going to get exhausted. And then that's not the point of the sport. It's to be as efficient as possible. And truthfully, it's a lot of like Danaher's material, because my coach is essentially taught more or less by him, or influenced by him, I should say. And then we've also got another guy in New York who was an ex-Danaher student in the Blue Basement. His name's Jason Rao.
Okay.
Phenomenal technician. Unbelievable obsession about the way things work and the tinkering. And this is why we get a lot of flack for the autism thing, because he just can't put a toy down.
Can you explain some of this? Because a lot of the listeners, I guess, wouldn't be familiar with jiu-jitsu or grappling. John Danaher, how do you describe him? Who is he?
Man.
And then the autism thing.
Yeah.
I understand, but what do you mean by that?
So the autism thing is basically the easiest way to explain it is that jiu-jitsu is human chess. And so if you think about your typical chess guy, your typical nerd who couldn't do any other sport because of their physical bankruptcy, they have no strength, no flexibility, no attributes, no speed. So they can't do tennis. They can't do, arguably they could do golf. Look at John Daly. But
Yeah,
you can't do rugby league, can't do rugby union, can't play a high level athletic demanding sport. Even volleyball, I didn't give enough credit to volleyball athletes and how freakishly athletic they are in terms of their vertical and their leaping ability on sand, which is like a non-structured surface where they have to be really, really dense in their ability to produce force based on where like their foot mechanics and all those sorts of things. Absolutely fascinating. So you put all those people together and then you exclude them from the main sports and they either do absolutely nothing, they do chess, or they do jiu-jitsu. And if you think about it in terms of like high school, you've got nerds and jocks, and there's basically like a big separator. All those jocks are the guys that played like the big time sports like the NFL, the basketball, those sorts of things. And the nerds were the ones that did like basket weaving and ping pong and other like non-athletic. Yeah.
Drama.
Stuff like that, exactly. And we've got a lot of drama people in jiu-jitsu, funnily enough. A lot of actors, a lot of movie stars are getting into it at the moment.
Yep.
And I think the main reason is because you don't have to be a special athlete to get good at it. You really don't. And it's much more of a thinking man's game than anything else. So if you have a natural aptitude due to your mind and the way that you try and solve puzzles, you can get very good quite quickly in spite of your lack of physicality, which is what basically generated the interest in the sport in the very beginning, when a smaller, weaker man could destroy a larger, stronger man with technique. That was the whole idea behind it. And I think that's very attractive to people. I'm obviously oversimplifying the categories of individuals here, but I think that's very appealing for people that didn't have that ability to play your rugby and your tennis and those sorts of things. They go, I finally get a crack at a sport where I don't just have to be a computer guy or an IT guy or something like that. I can actually do a physical sport, feel confident, feel capable, and use my brain to my advantage at the same time. I think that's kind of why it's popular. And then you add the autistic people in, and obviously they've got the same things. They've got just an inability to be athletic for whatever reason, or they've got this obsession quality to them based on the way that their mind works, and that really benefits jiu-jitsu. Because if you can find an asymmetry in one position and obsess over it, you now have a tactical advantage over the bigger, stronger person, at least until that technology gets updated.
Wasn't it Gordon Ryan who said something like, give a guy steroids who's autistic, and now you've got a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu fighter?
Yeah, that was Craig actually.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, we'll give Craig credit that. But he said we don't have to market to people who do steroids because we can just give them to them. We'll market to people that are autistic and then jump them on steroids afterwards. So you get the meeting of the worlds.
Yeah, it's a very interesting sport. Like I know I started jiu-jitsu like 15, maybe 18 years ago, when it was like no one knew about it. It was like the start of the UFC. It was,
in Australia?
Yes.
There weren't even any black belts then.
So the way I came about it was I was a personal trainer, and one of the guys came in and he was a chiropractor. His name's Dave DeConti. So if you're from South Australia, people know him. He did some MMA fights and stuff like that back like a decade ago. But he came in, he's like, I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I'd never really heard of it. I started boxing when I was young, and then did a bit of kickboxing. My old boss was the state kickboxing champion. So I did that, and I loved the sport. I didn't like getting my head beaten in, but I just liked the physicality of training and everything like that. And then he came in, he said, I do this Jiu Jitsu, and I was like, what is that? And he goes, it's sort of like karate on the ground. And I was like, I got no idea what that is. And he said, I'll show you one day. And I just remember like being on the ground and having someone lie on top of me and just essentially suffocate you for like 3 minutes. And I was like, this is interesting, but fucked at the same time, because you just can't do anything. And then we started training for a little bit, and then I ended up leaving and changing gyms. And then he wasn't my client anymore. He was with the gym and all of that type of stuff. But that was my introduction into it. I found it very, very fascinating. Like, it's just such a fascinating sport. But I don't even know what's going with that.
It takes you back several layers into your own brain, because you roll with a 65 kilo female who's a blue belt and they strangle you 100 times in your first session. And you look at it and you go, that doesn't make any sense at all. In any other situation, in any other environment, if it was just hand-to-hand combat, male beats female 99.9% of the time with no training. That's just how it works. We're bigger, stronger, faster, higher bone density, whatever, what have you. And then you add this weird little autistic technique to the mix, and then all of a sudden there's a huge asymmetry between how they can manhandle you even though they're smaller, even though they're weaker, even though they appear less physically imposing. And it really breaks your brain a little bit because you're like, what is going on here? I remember my first session at the current gym that I train at. There's a black belt there. He looks like Clay Guida. He's got like the curly hair and it's always in his face. And it's really annoying because he rubs it in your face every time you roll with him. He was wearing a white belt rash guard and he came over to me and asked me, he goes, oh, do you want to roll? Yeah, sure. No worries. My first Saturday session at the gym. And he proceeded to fucking destroy me. He submitted me 3 or 4 times with guillotines in the first 5 minutes. And then I just basically like hunkered down and tried to stop him doing shit to me. And because he was in a white belt rash guard, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I thought I was a good white belt. That guy is unbelievable. I couldn't even do anything to him. He's 75 kilos. I'm massive. I'm way bigger than him. It doesn't make sense. And I came up to the coach and I was like, who is that guy? And he goes, oh, he's one of the best black belts in Australia. He just likes wearing the white belt rash guard to fuck with people. And I was like, what a criminal. What an absolute criminal. And he's got a fight coming up this weekend, actually. He's going to be the featherweight champion of Hex on this Saturday in Melbourne, which is going to be really cool. But yeah, just little things like that. And it really fucks with you. I was fuming after that. I was just sitting over the steering wheel, looking over the steering wheel going, fucking, you know that, I forget what the name of the song is, but it's that some like metal guitar riff. And it's always on a meme where someone's about to like hurt something or like break something. You're sitting there and you go, oh, I can't believe that just happened. But that was like kind of my introduction into thinking about it in different ways as well. It's like, I can't just go in and try and smash people. I can't just go in and try and use strength all the time and all that sort of thing. And there's a weird dissection, probably a lot on Reddit. I don't use it. I refuse to go on it. But they're like, oh, well, strength is the only reason that people are better than the other. No, because it's how you use it first and foremost.
Totally.
It's not just if that guy's stronger, because then powerlifters and strongmen would be the best athletes in jiu-jitsu in the world. And it just so happens that they're not. Like Gordon's rolled with Hafthor Bjornsson and destroyed him. So it's like, it can't be about just strength. And then so even reconciling that in my own understanding, it's like, all right, maybe attributes are really, really good, but only in the way that you can use them in the most efficient way possible. And that kind of goes back to the mindset sort of thing.
You said something really interesting there about the technique, and the thing that I come across more than almost any business owner is that in order to get a business to move in the first place, you have to work really, really hard. And then what happens is most business owners that we come across, knowing the demographic that we work with, they've gone through startup phase. So they're making cash, they've got a clientele, they've got a product to market fit. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm working fucking 80 hours a week. I got 4 staff. These lazy motherfuckers aren't doing anything. I'm pulling all the weight. I'm working my ass off. I'm paying these other people. Cash flow was better when I just do everything myself. But at the same time, I want to try to grow a business and they don't know what to do. And it really comes down to that shift in mindset of hard work only gets you so far. Like, yes, it's the fuel that gets everything moving, but it's not the thing that keeps things moving or makes things better. Yeah. It sounds like that's sort of a similar mindset of how a lot of people do jiu-jitsu as well. Is like, I've got strength or I've got athletic ability or whatever, but that only gets you so far in the sport.
Or even time in training. They just assume falsely, the same way as you just alluded to, that more sessions equals more better, for lack of a better term, but it isn't.
More better.
Yeah.
That's a better. good English.
More betterer. I've got phenomenal England. But that's the way that they assume that it works. And it just can't be that way because there's only so many hours in a day that you can train feasibly at a high intensity before your body breaks down. It doesn't matter how many steroids you're on. It doesn't matter how much weightlifting you've done. Your body will destroy itself just by thinking that that's the only method of how to get better. And it's the exact same thing with the guy who's working 80 to 100 hour weeks, just smashing their head against the wall, thinking that, well, I just have to work harder. It's like, do you really think that you're working harder? Sorry, who do you think works harder in this situation? Yourself or Richard Branson? And then you hear of stories about Richard Branson going on ski trips all the time and not really working that hard, but working extremely efficiently, knowing the exact precision of where he should pinpoint his focus to make sure that it's the most efficient use of his time, and then relax for the rest of the day, knowing that the oscillation between extremely precise decision-making and hard work is very, very useful. Not that he hasn't worked hard or not that he doesn't work hard, but it's the way that he deploys his hard work that's the most important.
Run me through that psychology. So you went from white belt, which for those who don't know, there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's essentially white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt. Now, how long does the average person, like in jiu-jitsu, how long does the average person take to go from white to brown?
So typically you're spending a couple of years at each belt in most circumstances. And really it's just a shitty business model. Actually, it's a fantastic business model. It's just a shitty personal relations model because you're basically increasing the LTV of your customer by just not giving them a grade and then just dangling the carrot and going, you'll get there soon. You just got to pay us more fees. It's fucking retarded. But usually from white to black belt takes around 10 years. There's a pretty standardized. There's 5 belts, 2 years each. That's pretty much what happens.
Yep. And then so how quick did you go from white to brown?
So I did white to brown in 23 months underneath 2 years. And then I got my black belt in 3 years and 11 months.
So from 10 years on average to 3 years?
Just under 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the mentality behind that? Like, how did you go into it going, this model's fucked. I reckon I can speed it up and I reckon I can make shit happen way quicker if I think differently. What was the process of when did you realize? How did you realize it? How did you make that happen?
So I first happened upon a guy, his name's Kit Dale, Aussie guy. I actually believe he's from Adelaide.
I think he is. I
Yeah.
think, aren't both him, Kit Dale and Craig Jones from Adelaide?
Isaac Michelle, all these guys are from Adelaide.
No shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that as well. Okay. Yeah.
And they all jumped ship. And then even Declan Moody, who's a young, he's not young anymore. He's still younger, but he's an up and comer through the ranks relative to those guys. They'd all moved over from Adelaide and trained at Melbourne at Absolute with Lockie Giles. But they're all homegrown from where you're from.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Which is fascinating. Yeah,
Okay.
some sort of like epicenter down there of fuck all to do. Things close at 8 p.m. May as well be bashing each other in a jiu-jitsu gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much else to do.
That's why, because they just get angry and choke each other out because they got nothing else to do.
Exactly. Or they realize that there's a high proficiency of road rage down there because everyone drives like retards. I've only been to Adelaide once and the driving was shocking.
I think it's Australia in general.
It is Australia.
But Adelaide's
in
pretty
general.
bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But yeah, I happened upon this guy called Kit Dale, and his whole USP basically was I got a black belt in 4 years because I trained differently than those usual guys train, where you go to classes, you waste a lot of time doing roly-polies and star jumps and dumb shit that doesn't work. And he calls it tactical games or something like that, where he just thinks conceptually as opposed to technically about this move and memorizing things and rote learning, basically, which we all know from the scholastic system is complete and utter rubbish. Rote learning systems just don't work. You learn through play and experience and all these sorts of things. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So I took that and I went to my coach and I said, the first coach, Severino, I said, do you reckon I could do that? You reckon I could copy that? And he goes, you know what, bro? You can do anything you want. You set your mind to it, by all means, you go for it. And that was all I needed. And to be quite frank, I put it down after that. I didn't have it as a mental goal. I didn't have it as an attitude or anything like that. I didn't write it on my vision board and say, I'm going to fucking go and get this. I really just accepted that it was possible. And that was it. And then 3 years and 11 months later, or however many months it was since me learning that information and applying it, I ended up beating him. And so I'm the fastest black belt in history with no prior combat sports experience.
You beat Kit Dale?
Yeah.
No kidding.
By like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, as in, I thought you meant beat him on the
No.
No.
He's in LA making movies and stuff now. He doesn't even compete anymore. He still trains. He's still very good. Apparently he's inhumanely strong for a guy that weighs like 88, 90 kilos.
I've seen him. He was a bit of a bigger dude, and then now he's just like jacked and ripped.
He's a tank of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's as wide as he is tall.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a tank of a thing.
I was going to say, I think you're like you're trying to go down that path as well. Like when we walked out, we were sitting there eating lunch, and then Jess goes, "I think that's your guy." And I turn around, and there's his shoulders just walking away from the window. I was like, "Yeah, that's Josh."
Creating a shadow.
And the
from
pink
sun.
Crocs as well. That's a dead giveaway.
That's my identifier. Yeah, you know it's me if I'm wearing pink.
So go into the mindset of the sport. You go into competitions, someone is literally trying to choke you unconscious. You're standing there on the mats. How do you think through that situation? Like you competed only recently with Gordon Ryan, essentially the greatest grappler in history. Mm-hmm. How do you go into that? And that was only with short notice as well, from what I remember. Like
11 days.
11 days. So you essentially, I mean, people train for fucking years to get on a mat to compete with the greatest person in history, like a Mike Tyson or whatever. Gordon Ryan is essentially the Mike Tyson or the, you know, of grappling and jiu-jitsu. And so you get 11 days notice. How what's that process like? Like, is that like a oh fuck moment, like this is real, or is that just like this is what I've been training for? Run me through that whole 11 days and then the fight and then after the fight.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because you get that information, and I was talking to the promoter Ricardo, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh, are you available in 2 weeks?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "We might have a fight for you on who's number one." And first of all, I'm absolutely enthralled with the idea of being on that show because it's the biggest jiu-jitsu promotion that does like regular super fight events throughout the year. And I'm like, yeah, that would be sick. Count me in. I said, just out of curiosity. I already said yes before I knew who it was. I said, just out of curiosity, who's it against? And he goes, Gordon Wright. And I'm like, that's even fucking better. I'm now more excited than I could have otherwise been. I said to him, I was like, look, let me just double check that I'm not stepping on any toes because we train at Gordon's gym when we go to the States in America. My coach and his coach are friendly. And then we've obviously built a relationship over many, many years. Being able to go there, it's an invite-only gym. It's a private training facility. So you have to be invited to go and train there. And so we have that invite basically whenever we want to. And we've sent students over there now, and we've got a lot of cross-pollination, which is really, really beneficial because one of the best training rooms in the world. You can't ask for much more. It'd be like being on the board at an Amazon meeting and Bezos is sitting next to you. You can just ask him questions. It's really fucking cool. Really cool experience to be in there. And came back. Gordon said he wanted to do it. John said it was okay and all that sort of thing. We cleared the air and made sure we weren't like going to cause a rift or anything like that. And we flew out 6 or 7 days later with a couple of days in between. Coach figured out the genius idea of staying on Australian time because roughly doing the calculations, our 10 a.m. morning session was going to be the same time that I had the fight on the Friday evening as over in Texas. Mm-hmm. And we only had a short window with no acclimatization whatsoever. So we're like, all right, we'll stay on Australia time. We'll wake up at 3 p.m. in the Arvo, Austin time, and go to sleep at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So we're on Australian time. That way I'm fresh and I'm ready to go. And I'd never felt better prepared in terms of like my physicality for a super fight than I had, especially internationally. Usually you go over there and you're a bit groggy and you've got the jet lag and all that sort of thing. It's not actually that bad going to the States. It's worse coming back. That's the real stickler. But as an athlete, you have to be ready to perform physically, and jet lag will absolutely neuter your performance. It's a big consideration. And so that was a big part of the camp plan. And we actually ended up training at a Brazilian Fight Factory with the Tackett brothers, who are lovely, lovely individuals. They welcome us with open arms. They didn't make us pay for training or anything like that. It was really, really nice of them. And then got up all the way to the press conference and the media and all that sort of thing. And Gordon's a standard dude. Like if you talk shit to him, he's going to talk shit to you. If you're cordial, he'll be cordial with you. He's got a very bad reputation online. We were speaking about it beforehand.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to come at me on Instagram and call me a dickhead, well, then I'm going to call you a dickhead back. And if people only see that engagement of you, then they're automatically going to assume that you just bite back at everything. And it's this weird macrocosm and simulacrum of an individual that I'm sure you get this all the time as well. People paint you as this person, but they're only seeing you on social media for 2 clips, and then they already make their mind up based on who you are as an individual.
Yep.
And you've got to take a step back and think about how complex you are as a person watching this. Think about all your likes, all your interests, all your dislikes, all your personality traits, who you are with your son and who you are with your daughter and who you are with your parents and who you are with your best mates, where you talk shit, you're a fat fuck, blah, 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 and who you are with your missus, because you would never say it. Yeah.
You know, I ate that chicken burger for lunch that I shouldn't have.
No, and you would never say that to your girlfriend, but you would say it to your best friend. So you're actually a different person based on the environment that you're in. So to pin somebody on the internet as a dickhead based on one video is a complete overestimation. It's a complete misrepresentation of that person. But I think people get caught up in it, and it's very separated, because you see sometimes it's that loser with username 278674 with no profile picture. So you literally don't conceive of them as being a human being.
Yep.
So you treat them as if they weren't a human. And then that's sort of the discrepancy between how you would act in person and how you would act online. And then people just decide that that's that person. And so when you meet him in person, you're like, oh, you're actually just a normal guy. You're heavily autistic, but you're just a nice guy. And that is what it is. And the age-old thing of the way that you treat people is the way that they will probably treat you.
Yep.
And it's so simple, but people just refuse to believe that that's true because they've made their idea up based off a very tiny inference of one piece of content that they've found. And then that just is the death wish. You're now put in the dickhead bucket because you said something that I don't like.
We were talking about that with Zara Kell earlier, who's the 4 times world wakeboarding champion, and we're just having that chat about social media. And I said, how do you go on social media? When you Google her, it comes up internet personality, not world wakeboarding champion. And I said, how do you deal with that? And she's like, it is what it is. But I mean, she's got a massive following on TikTok and quite a big one on Instagram as well. And I said, do you find it interesting that people talk shit about you online, but how many people have ever come up and said anything to you on the street or face to face? And it's always online. And she said, it's just, you put that screen in front of someone and there's like this separation between what's human and what's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're your size anyway, who gives a fuck if they did come up in the street? They're in
that is true.
They're in a world of hurt.
That is true. It's such a weird thing. And Jimmy Carr put it really well. And I'm nowhere near as famous as Jimmy Carr. And he said, being famous is weird because it's like you're in a town where everybody else has Alzheimer's and you don't. So they keep like coming up to you, like, hi, how are you? And then the next person, hi, how are you? They keep repeating the same conversations.
Yep.
And it's this really weird phenomenon of, like you say, the same things to the same people again and again and again. It's this very weird reaction. But to the point of what you were just talking about, even though it's weird, it's never negative. Ever. Some people are weird, but they're never coming up to you and saying you're a dickhead in real life, ever. And it's so strange because if you just took everything for face value on the internet, you would think that people are just horrible individuals. But I think they're given the opportunity to be horrible and then otherwise persuaded to do so because of what we just talked about, because there's a disconnect between that human on the other side. It's very fascinating. I think it does more harm than bad, more harm than good rather, for most people, because they don't see it from a creating perspective. They see it from a consumption perspective. And obviously with emotional intelligence being at all-time lows, they just choose to act out on something that they disagree with immediately, knowing that there's almost no consequence whatsoever. Versus if you have a creating perspective, you actually can use it for good. So when people ask me, they're like, oh, do you think social media is bad or good? I say that it's a net benefit for me specifically, but then I use it correctly. Like, is a hammer a net benefit or is it a net negative? Well, it depends on how you use it. If you use it to hit yourself in the head, it's probably harm.
Although most of the people in the comments probably need to use it for that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly
right. Reddit.
Right. Yeah.
Free hammer with every Reddit account.
Reddit's just completely ridiculous. There should be euthanasia attached to Reddit. It's ridiculous. It's even worse because of the anonymity.
Yes.
And even, I don't know if you have this as well, the representation between TikTok and YouTube comments over here and then like Instagram, Facebook comments, because usually Instagram, Facebook is a lot more front facing. You have your profile picture, your name attached.
Yes.
So people act a little bit more cordially, although sometimes not. And then on TikTok and YouTube, it's very anonymous.
Yes.
And you get the worst of people. And then Reddit is a further extrapolation of that. Because there's no way you could ever figure out who someone is on Reddit.
Yep.
They can tell you, but you don't know if they're telling the truth. That's my biggest problem with it. There's no accountability.
I think was it Dave Chappelle's latest thing that he did? There was him and who's the comedian? Cat Williams.
Cat Williams.
And he was talking about it, and he's like, Cat Williams came up to him and was all pissed off because on Twitter he said Dave Chappelle was giving him shit on Twitter. And it wasn't him. He confronts him and he goes like, "You've been giving me shit on Twitter." And Dave Chappelle goes, "I don't have a Twitter account."
No.
And then Dave Chappelle goes, "I thought you were giving me shit on Twitter." And he goes, "I don't have a Twitter account." And so there's two people with Twitter accounts that are Dave Chappelle and Cat Williams, and they're both teeing off at each other, and they both don't have TikTok accounts.
Amazing.
And they're both pissed off at each other based on what the other one had said on Twitter.
Isn't that funny? Wow. Someone had gone out of their way to pose as each of those individuals.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, supposedly, I mean, they might both just be...
they might be playing 3D chess.
100%.
They might be playing 3D chess. That's actually really interesting. Yeah, that's why you can't really take it too seriously. And there's a really good quote that I like, and it talks about the relationship between praise and criticism. And it says, if you are willing to be intoxicated or infatuated with the compliments of strangers, then you have to have space for the criticisms.
Yes.
And they're not all worth it, especially when you consider if you would not trade places with the person offering the criticism, then it's not worth it.
Yeah. I think that was a Dr. John DeMartini quote. He said, if you're addicted to praise, criticism stings like a bitch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's actually really good. I did a lot of his online material in that little close everybody in their houses period. It was great. I got a lot
he's a
from
good friend of mine. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So
right.
I spent a lot of time with him. Him and his team, they flew me out to Melbourne to do intros for him for some of his events. And when I go to Houston, I hang out with him, and he's got 2 daughters, Brisha and Elena, that I'm good friends with. Brisha's awesome. She's a fashion designer. So every time I go over there, we'll be in the middle of a course or something. She's like, you want to go shopping? I'm like, fuck yeah. And so I go out with her and go shopping, and Elena runs the DeMartini Institute. So they're awesome. John's a really awesome dude, like just to hang out with. Like
individual.
He's definitely fascinating and funny as well. Like
oh really?
Well, people see him as this front-facing character of he's very serious and very highly intelligent and all of that. But behind closed doors, or even if you spend enough time with him at events, he's pretty fucking loose. Like the shit that he used to do and all the stuff that he talks about. Like he's a pretty interesting cat.
Interesting.
You know? Like he grew up living on the street and surfing and all of that type of stuff, and then couldn't read and
Yeah, his story is fascinating.
Yep.
Very fascinating. Yeah, well, there you go.
I want to go back to your mindset around that fight, because I think that's such a, like, having followed you for a little bit, and then we'd spoken online, and then when I saw that you were fighting Gordon Ryan, I was just like, this is fucking awesome. Like, not only is it an Australian fighting the best of the best, but also as well, like, I want to see how you would perform against somebody like that, because I think that it was a great opportunity for your career and, you know, to put you on the map. Run me through the emotional journey, or was it just like, it's game time, block out the emotions? Like, how did you run through? Was there a roller coaster? Was there any fear, worry, concern, stress? Like, how did you just set everything up mentally and emotionally?
Oddly enough, it was the calmest I'd ever been leading up to any athletic endeavor in my entire life. I'm not even sure as to why. I think the gravity of the situation for me specifically was kind of enough to think about it in a way as if I, basically what we're talking about then, if you're intoxicated by praise and criticism and everything else. And I just chose to ignore all of it, because nothing that was going to be said online or me like capitalizing on it or anything like that was going to help me in competition. And so I just ignored all of it, just essentially turned my phone off to it, and Instagram notifications went off. Not that I have them on anyway, but I really just put myself in a position to be extremely well prepared mentally, knowing that there was essentially no pressure on me whatsoever. It was 11 days notice. 4 other people turned the fight down. I was the only one who said yes. I was coming all the way from Australia. I had competed at the top level and then lost against a guy who had beat Gordon. So I'm like not in the same vicinity quite yet, and up and coming and all that sort of thing. And no one really expected me to do anything. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. Like, I don't have any real expectations on me whatsoever. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing and do the best that I physically can on the day, prepare myself in a way that I give myself that opportunity, and then go for it. And I even remember backstage, it's really interesting when you do those events, especially ADCC and Who's Number One and all those big events. You see the difference in preparation between all of the other athletes as well, all of the top level guys. Because a Who's Number One card on the main card, you've got anywhere between the top 25 and top 1 people in the world at any one time, all sharing one room, which is really fascinating. And you see that there's no jitters, there's no nerves. If they have them, they're dealing with them quite well internally, not externally. Mm-hmm. And there's no physical tells that anybody's one way or the other. Some guys choose to nap. Diego Pato was having a nap in a hoodie like this, and they had to wake him up and say, "You ready to fight now?" And he goes, "Yeah." He just walks out there cool as a cucumber, destroyed whoever he was competing against, and just went out that way. And there's a couple of other guys, you kind of see them, they get into a rhythm, they put their headphones on, they walk around like 8 Mile, like they're ready to do the rap battle, and they got their hoodie up and they're kind of walking around like this. But it's really fascinating to see each of those things. And I actually employed something I hadn't before any other competition. It was like a little breathing practice and a little bit of a ritual and routine. And just kind of like a somatic sensory thing as well, like touching all over and basically just being where you were right then, not worrying about expectations or how things are going to go. And the best athletes that I've studied in terms of like your Michael Jordans, your Kobe Bryants, your Tiger Woods, all those guys, they say that they do their best to only think about their task at hand rather than the expectation of their task at hand. So Kobe's been on record saying that when I shoot a basket, I don't think about it going in or I don't think about it not missing. I just perform the action. If it does or it doesn't, that's not really up to me after the fact.
Yep.
And then when I return myself to the back end of the court when I'm playing defense, that's already gone. I'm not worried about that anymore. And that was something I did really poorly in rugby league. I would be whipping myself for an error I made 15 minutes early, which means I'm not seeing the lay of the land. I'm not seeing the landscape of the game. I'm not looking at that individual for how tired he is. I'm worried about what I did 10, 15 minutes ago, which means I'm living in the past and I'm not performing at my best. And so using these lessons from my previous career and then extrapolating that into what I do now, it's all about just this, it's kind of like woo-woo-y Taoist sort of thing. It's like go with the event, go with how it's going to go, and just put yourself in a position to be as calm and centered as possible. And then you let what happen will happen. Because as far as I'm concerned, all the training had been done. I can't make any adjustments on the day. The only thing I can do is not fuck it up by obviously not drinking and doing drugs and all those sort of things that would definitely make a big difference. Or dealing with nerves in a very poor manner and letting that get to you and the seriousness of the situation get to you.
How does your food prep look like leading up to it? So you got 11 days. Do you go and like change diet? Do you clean anything up, or like you still eating chicken burgers and Big Macs, or like what does the diet look like?
Never Macca's. Macca's is fucking disgusting. But yeah, I don't change anything. It goes along the same logical train as everything I do is based on what I do every single day regarding training and competition. And I don't see that there's a big discrepancy between the two because it's essentially more or less the same thing. The only difference is the referee, the crowd, and the location most of the time. Everything else is the same. I will be displaying skills of jiu-jitsu that I've been learning for a very long time. I'll be exerting physical energy. I'll be sweating. My heart rate will elevate. I'll probably get tired in some degree. I'll probably experience a high heart rate, loss of breath, all those sorts of things. And all of that outweighs what is different on the day. And so using that logic, I don't change the amount of caffeine that I have on a normal day. I don't change the food that I have on a normal day. I don't change my wake up time on a normal day. I know people like to sleep in on competition day, give themselves a bit of extra rest. And I just find that takes me out of rhythm and everything. And what I do every single day is almost identical to the day before and the day after. And so just because there's a competition on doesn't really mean that there's any special or different. Or I like the Conor McGregor line of if you're thinking about like, oh, I forgot my lucky jockstrap or whatever the fuck, like you've already lost. Because you need things to be perfect for you to perform, and nothing is ever perfect. It's the people who can fight in the chaos of everything that's going on and still succeed within the chaos that are the ones that are going to be champions, not the ones that need the perfect environment, because perfect environment doesn't exist. The same with business advice, I'd imagine. It's the same thing. It's like, well, what's the best business to start, or when's the perfect time to start? Well, it's either 10 years ago or now. You don't have 10 years ago, so start now. I meet all these like chaotic, stress as fuck business owners, and they're like, yeah, but if I can just get like all of this shit off my plate and then blah, blah, and then, you know, if I just had more cash in the bank, then it would be easier. I'm like, motherfucker, no one sues a broke person. Right? Like when you're broke, you actually have the less amount of financial stress. Everyone thinks I don't have money, more financial stress, but it's the complete opposite. The more money you have, the more people want to sue you, the more tax you got to pay, the more fuck ups there are, the more like, you know, it's 100. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Like, I mean, you know, people think if I hire more staff, then I get more shit off my plate. I'm like, more staff, more people, more head fucks. Like, it doesn't get easier. 100%. Yeah. And that's, you know, when we're talking about leadership and management, it's always that like every person you add into the business is more complexity, more chaos, more fuck ups, more problems, more cash flow. Like it just, everything complicates itself. Yeah. Yeah. Look at these people that try and add people to their relationship. Does it make it easier or worse?
I don't know.
9 out of the 10 times, it does not make it less complicated. It really doesn't. And people are like, yeah, that must be sick. 2 girlfriends. I'm like, trust me, you know.
We laugh about that. I'm like, one's hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It'd be worse if there were 2 husbands, because if Jess had another one like me, fuck, it'd be chaos.
Oh, yeah.
I'm almost impossible to deal with on a good day.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, there's that self-awareness where you're like, I'm difficult enough to deal with. We don't need another one.
Totally. So you went from rugby league, and I want to, like, mindset is the key thing. Like, mindset and leadership is the thing that is my skill set. You know, I've been coaching now for 20 years. I'm really fascinated about the transition. You had Josh that was younger, who drink drives, who has, or not drink drives, license
Full
suspension, all of that sort of shit. You're playing rugby, you know, and then all of a sudden you've got this mindset now, which is, I'm just chilled before a comp, you know, I'm pretty focused. You've got your business now, which, you know, from what I see is doing pretty awesome shit as well. How did you develop that mindset, and when did it start to transition? And what was the catalyst to it?
The catalyst is my favorite way to answer this, because I was one of those people that had never read a book cover to cover. Because when I was in school, I was always worried about how I was perceived from the outside, not intrinsically. And intrinsically, I didn't have a good method of dealing with anything. Just lack of emotional intelligence from my upbringing and all that sort of thing. And I just decided that because we had a very chaotic household, my needs didn't really matter that much. So shut the fuck up, be quiet, don't speak your mind, don't do those things. Look good on the outside, but don't worry about the internals. And that was what I basically installed as a lesson. So when we was reading, I remember very vividly, we were at a table, one of those little sit-down tables in primary school, and I was only worried about the turning of the pages of the people next to me and the speed of which they were doing it as they were actually reading, so that I could match them with the speed that they were doing it, because I have a difficulty with reading. And that basically set me up for just, if it looks good on the outside, then it'll be fine, and all that sort of thing. So I was always looking externally for answers, never internally. And that always led me to look externally for excuses as well. And so I was always the person to blame the economy, and I was always the person to blame the teachers, and I was always the person to blame the authoritarian figures. And this person said this, and they're an asshole, not knowing that it was really my fault because I didn't deal with it properly.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so it just became one of those things. And obviously, the way that I was brought up in relation to my mother, we always talked about, she always wanted to drive a Porsche Boxster. That was her dream car. It's a horrible choice for a dream car, but anyway, that's hers. And I said to her, I was like, why don't you buy one then? I'm an 8-year-old kid. I don't know how fucking money works. Just go fucking get one. And she goes, oh, well, people who have them are drug dealers or they're lucky. They're the only 2 options. And I'm like, what the fuck? The world's bullshit. I had this existential crisis like 8 years old. I'm like, really? I got to do that? And I just thought that something was off about that. Something was weird about that. And then I got to 13 and kind of more or less the same things, where she was dealing with weight loss and struggling with that and overweight and all that sort of thing. And I thought, no, there's definitely something I could do about this. And I asked her very vividly. It's something we used to talk about a lot, actually. She remembers it vivid as day. I came to her and I said, look, I want to start eating healthier. Can we start like preparing better meals or something? Like lasagna every night, it's just not cutting it. I feel shit afterwards and all that sort of thing. And as a 13-year-old, that's a really strange request. And that was kind of where it started. It obviously has a snowballing effect. The longer that you do it, the more momentum you gain. And I didn't really make the switch from everything's everybody else's fault to everything is my fault until about, I want to say like 22, maybe 23. So it was a long period of time where I was kind of like getting some leeway and some momentum in terms of, all right, I have onus to be able to affect my outside reality by the decisions that I make and the responsibility that I take as a result of that. And that is paralleled within the driving story of me just not taking responsibility for everything, for anything. And I was like, it's their fault. If the cop wasn't there, they wouldn't have caught me speeding. It's like, no, dickhead, drive the speed limit. You won't get caught even if they are there. And so that was kind of the thing. And go back to the book story. I started reading books. The first book I ever finished cover to cover was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich at 21. And I've still got it. It's like this beautiful matte black covering with a pink.
I know the one. I've
got
got
it. I've got it in my bedroom. It was the first thing I ever read cover to cover. And then I went on to How to Win Friends and Influence People. Then I went into all of Dale Carnegie's stuff. And I read a bunch of different things. And it really started to change the way that my outlook on life really was and how I was operating within my own environment. But I was one of those people that could read and talk the talk but never walk the walk. And I was always thinking about these concepts, and I read Atomic Habits and then applied nothing. 99% of people do that with that book. And they go, oh, well, did you know that this is how you create a habit? And you're like, yeah, but you're overweight.
They're all now on Reddit.
Exactly. They're all Reddit users. And so it's a really interesting representation of like, you think that you're moving in the right direction. You're in self-development. You can talk about these concepts and all these cool theories, but you just don't apply with it. And I finally got to a point where I was sick of existing in that manner, where people saw me and perceived me as otherwise relatively intelligent because of the material that I was reading, but I had no experience to back it up. I was just a regurgitator. I was one of these 18-year-old relationship coaches. They're just fucking morons, or these e-com dropshipping business retards you probably deal with every day.
Every day in my inbox.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or the we can help you build your Instagram account with 8 followers.
They're the best.
Yeah.
They are my favorite. They're like, oh, organic Instagram growth strategy. You click on their profile and they got 12 followers. You're like, you're doing really well.
And 15 photos standing next to a different Ferrari or a Lambo.
Yeah. There's one in Sydney. It's a yellow Huracan. It's got the same rego plate in like 3 different ads.
Okay.
Of different people.
Yeah.
And you're like, we know where you got that from, you fucking idiot. It's just crazy. But yeah, it was only really when I started to get some momentum and some headway around the time that I pretty much started jiu-jitsu, where I just went, all right, well, everything's my fault. And the more that I come to recognizing that, the better my life is going to be, because I'm the only one that has the ability to change the way that I think, change the way that I act. And that's it. And if I could just do that, everything that comes of that is what it is. And I don't have to blame anybody else. It's not society's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not the economy's fault. And then you start to actually build a lot of momentum, because you realize the more that I put in, not in terms of just hard work like we were talking about before, but the more work that I put in of a high quality and a high quantity, the better results that I will generate long term.
No matter you got a Porsche Boxster?
No. Fuck no. No way. 911 Turbo, I would get any day of the week, but definitely not a Boxster.
There was a mint one yesterday. We pulled up in the hotel car park, and there was a 911 Carrera just sitting there.
Nice.
It was absolutely fucking mint.
Nice.
So it's good to know that you're a car guy as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Big car guy. I met somebody, I've known this person for a very long time. He's one of the staff at the cafe that I frequent on a Tuesday and Thursday. He's the only guy that I've ever met that's not a car guy. And he was just like, I don't give a fuck how much horsepower it has. I'm like, do you have a penis? Because it sounds like you don't. I mean, like, seriously.
Smell the estrogen.
Yeah, I literally caught it. I'm like, dude, you've never been in a car where you like roll down the windows as soon as you see a tunnel coming and then fucking plant it? That doesn't get you giddy and excited? And he goes, nah. I was like, we're no longer friends. This is completely ridiculous. What do you do all day?
I actually meet a lot of guys that aren't into cars, because I obviously meet a lot of people with my car, and they come up and they go, oh, I'd love to have one of these. And I'm like, look, if you're a car guy, you're a car guy. If you're not a car guy, or if you're not a car girl, whatever, like, just spend money on what you love. Like, if it's your family, spend on your fucking family. If you love traveling, spend on fucking travel. Don't buy a car and think that it's going to make life good, because it won't.
Don't buy it searching fulfillment in something that you don't even really want or need. Or it's that Ramit Sethi principle of like, spend lavishly on the things that you really love, and rigorously cut expenses on the things you don't love.
100%. And I mean, I think that's like, again, it's the Reddit, the Instagram thing. Like, you just have a car to show off. I'm like, no, motherfucker, you'd have a car to show off. Like, I buy it because I'm a car guy. There's nothing more awesome. Like, when you're in Adelaide, we're going for a spin. I'll come pick you up from the airport.
100%,
as long as your bag's only about this big. Nothing else fits in the car. I don't even think you'd fit in the car, but we'll have a crack.
I travel criminally light. My coach always says that to me. He goes, how do you pack so little? And it's just how I operate. I like going into airports as frequently as possible with only carry-on. If I can get away with no checked baggage, I will absolutely do it. Even if my duffel bag is full to the brim, I'll just make that happen. So it could work.
It's a smart way to travel.
It could work.
Now we got to start wrapping up. So I want your final words for the person that's sitting here watching this right now, and they're in that place where they've got the excuses, they've got the blame, whether it's in business, whether it's in their relationship, whether it's in their sport or whatever. They've got a ton of excuses. They're bitching out all the time. They're not getting the results that they want. What's your advice for them?
Good question. Really good question. I would play a hypothetical thought experiment and look at the people with the same attitude that you have, that are likely 5 or 10 years your senior, and look at the things that they have gotten as a result of their mindset that they currently hold. And ask yourself, do you want to be there in 10 years? Because that is the tombstone that you're writing for yourself metaphorically. If nothing changes. And so if they're 10 years your senior and they have the same mindset as you do, that will be the exact position that you end up in. And if that's not where you want to be, it is only your responsibility, nobody else's. And if you listen to people speak, like a lot of people you have on your show and a lot of people that I listen to on Chris Williamson and Rogan and all these things, and they're otherwise very successful, they recognize that core fundamental truth that it's all about them. It's not about their audience. It's not about anything outside of them. It's all about them and how they respond to things and the way that they choose to perceive the world. And that's the only real thing you have any sort of difference on in terms of the way that you operate is how you choose to see things and how you act. And that's it. And you rob yourself of those two things if you blame other people. So you're robbing yourself of all of your potential to move forwards. And that's going to be a bitter, gross truth to come to terms with. If you can get over that, you can get past it, and then you can recognize that they are really your only two options. But you have to be willing to admit that it's all you. And that can be very painful for some people. Because just like David Goggins' story, he was 400 pounds, drinking chocolate milkshakes, eating donuts. You got to look in the mirror and say, you can't admit that it's anybody else's fault except yourself. So then you go, but it was my parents the way that, no. But it was the environment, no. It was just me. Okay, great. As soon as you get past that, no matter how bitter and how gross that is as a feeling, you now have the keys to the kingdom to have power to move forwards. And your life, I guarantee you, your life gets exponentially better. Like my life has changed unbelievably so in a 5-year period. 5 years in the grand scheme of things is nothing. Literally nothing. Like at the time that I changed, it was more or less a quarter of my existence. Around about, a little bit over. If you're not willing to make that adjustment, then you won't be changing anytime soon. And if you are where you are and you're genuinely very happy and grateful for your existence and you're just working your work and you've got kids and a family and all that sort of stuff and you're rich in that aspect, all power to you. You've cracked the code, you've finished it, you didn't need the fucking Lambos and whatever else. Congratulations, because you're killing it. You're winning at life. It's not for everybody that wants to be at the very, very tippy top of their field. And I'm not saying that you have to be that. I'm just saying that if you take responsibility for your actions, no matter what you want or no matter what you want to have or the experiences that you want to experience, they'll be much better if you just take on the responsibility and the onus of every action is your own and the result of every action is the way that you see that. And then that's it.
That's awesome. Absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much for being here and appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Josh.
That was good.
Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.